Yesterday, there was a big announcement with Age of Empires on a new patch that's upcoming, and I was traveling the day that it was announced. I'm now here at the Experion in Hamburg, Germany for a LAN event, which I'll talk more about at the end of the video. But I wanted to talk about all the changes, and there were a lot of changes, so we're going to skip over some of the tiny details that I don't think have big effect, and just get into the very big things from the start. So first thing, which is mind-blowing to me, is they're changing castle visuals, excuse me. And so there's going to be 25 new castle visuals, and every single civilization is basically going to have its own unique castle. This is pretty crazy. Now, I was a little concerned about it initially because I thought change could be a problem, but the castles look amazing. And I mean, this is something a lot of people have wanted for a very long time. Certain civilizations have just been sharing castles when historically they may have not. So I think this will take some getting used to for people who are used to civilizations having castles that look a certain way. But I think this looks like an amazing change to really add some flavor to the game. Along the same lines, they've also spiced up unique unit visuals. And so basically every elite unique unit will have a different visual than the non-elite. And I mean, from even just a gameplay standpoint, it's actually kind of nice for you without having to click a unit during the game to know if it's been upgraded. So this actually has some practical competitive uses, in my opinion. Plus, it just looks freaking cool. So you can see some of them here, like the Teutonic Knights got the little wings on the helmet there. Looks like we've got the, what are we actually working with here? This... is that a Tarkin? I believe that's a Tarkin, actually. This is clearly a Keshik. We've also got the Magyar Hussar looks a bit spicier. The Mameluke looks a bit spicier. I like it. This is a great change. The Janissaries are going to have hats, which, of course, who doesn't want a hat? There are some cases where the units will be the same as what they have been, of course, and they're either going to make the non-elite one stand out a bit differently, or they're going to make the elite one be a bit different. But lots of changes to come there. I'm sure we'll have examples once the patch comes out, but I think a really fun change. Now, along the same lines, they're also doing regional monks and monastery visuals, which I know people have been calling for a very long time. So there's going to be 6 monk visuals that have been distributed to relevant civilizations. And they also added a pagan priest in the scenario editor. I'm excited to see that. I don't know if that's listed here. Maybe it is one of the ones that are listed. They've also added a conversion animation for monks, and the previous animation is now used for healing exclusively. So I'm really excited about that. I think it was actually the same visual for everything before. Now it will look slightly different. But yeah, these look really nice. And also, it is a little bit more historically accurate, right? I'm wondering if they're all going to be called monks, actually. I think technically we could call different ones. You could have priest, monk, not too informed on that, but could have some different naming there. Also, there's now different monasteries as well. So these are visuals for the Byzantines, Ethiopians, and shamanistic civilizations, respectively. Hope I said that right. So this all makes sense, and I think this could be a good change. Something else they added, now this doesn't affect every unit, is the attack animations are now synced up with the actual attack of units. I think this is more of an issue for things like Spearmen, for example. Really weird sometimes where you feel like a unit should have done damage because of the way the animation worked and it never did. So this is about time that they fix that. That's a really nice change. They also are introducing a new idle combat animation for villagers, spearman line, Chemioks, Gilman, and Teutonic Knights. And so this is, we'll have to see it, but I think going to make it a little bit easier visually to know what's happening, but also it might just look a bit better as well, which is always great. Now with the UI, they've made a lot of changes to make the tech tree make a little bit more sense and just reorganize things. I won't dive into super specifics on this, but I think maybe because they're adding some things, they realized the tech tree needed to be reworked and just look a little bit nicer. So they have done that here. Basically, it says a more efficient use of space, removing regional units not available for the civilization. That makes sense. There's a lot of instances where sometimes there's just some useless space there on the tech tree. They've also added consistent wording. There's a lot of details in Age of Empires, and I don't know exactly what the examples are. I don't think they've given us full examples, but there are some wordings that are just straight up deceiving. I'm curious on if it's still going to say that archers all fire faster for Ethiopians, for example, even though their cav archers don't fire faster, so it should say foot archers, and it doesn't. I'm curious if it's going to say you need 2 buildings to go up to the next stage instead of 2 unique buildings to go up to the next stage, because some people might build 2 blacksmiths, for example, and be like, yo, what gives? I just made 2. I should go to Castle Age. There's a lot of examples there, but they're basically going to make more consistent wording. And also they're updating the tech tree panel to make things look a bit easier in the game, or just easier to understand. You can read more about it yourself, of course, but just making all of this easier as a player is what quality of life is all about, right? Along those lines, the attack and armor display is changed now. So if you hover the attack and armor values of a unit, it will now display the list of all attack and armor values. Previously, this was only available in Capture Age. Now you can actually know specific little details of how your unit attacks and what type of damage it does. So I think that's really good, and I'm excited to see more. They also adjusted the main menu, which, you know, is okay, that's cool. But then gameplay. Like, we really want to get into gameplay. We want to get into the balance here. Well, maybe some of these general things I should probably skip, because it's talking about rock terrains and handicaps, which are all nice changes. But we're going to zoom past that. We're going to zoom past the campaign stuff. We're going to move into the general balance changes now. And I've got some opinions on this. So, Elite Step Lancer upgrade cost has been reduced from 900 food and 550 gold to 600 food and 550 gold. That is a 300 food decrease. That, to me, is pretty crazy. Now, Step Lancers aren't widely used by everybody. I personally feel as though Step Lancers are really strong in unique cases, so it definitely makes that stronger, but maybe we'll see a bit more Step Lancer play. They have increased the training time of Cav Archers by 3 seconds, and that would be the same for Heavy CA as well, essentially to make it a bit harder to get to Cav Archers, because if you can get to a big ball of Cav Archers, it can be very strong. I like that change. I think it's a good change. That certainly felt needed. The Elite Step Lancer one, we'll see. Elite Elfin Archer cost has been changed from 80 food, 70 gold to 60 food and 80 gold. Personally, I don't really love that change. I actually liked it heavy on the food side. I think it makes sense for a food unit, just thematically. We'll see what that does. It does obviously make them more gold heavy now, but could maybe be very minimal change in the end. This is pretty interesting. Transport ship garrison capacity increased from 5 to 20. So that's just straight up, right? And I guess that's to make maybe like utilizing transport ships, because that's always really complicated in certain types of maps, just easier. But yeah, careening and dry dock no longer improve transport garrison capacity, obviously. So you just straight up can do that. I kind of like it from a quality of life standpoint, because it was always frustrating to get to that point of the game where you'd need to research a tech just to send 5 more units across. Maybe what they could have done is made the initial transport ship 10 and then still have a tech that unlocks 20. I think I would have liked that more, but this is still going a decent direction. They've increased the base movement speed of trade carts and trade cogs, which again, very interesting. And then caravan effect reduced for trade units. And so they're making trade pre-caravan upgrade faster, and then it's going to equal out, I think, to pretty much be the same speed with caravan. I'm curious on your thoughts on that. I personally didn't. I'm surprised they did it, but there are a lot of people maybe who trade and don't know about caravan, so maybe it helps the people who do that. And realistically, at a high level, if you're going to be adding trade, you're going to be getting caravan anyways. So I think it kind of fills out the lower area of the player base and helps them out a little bit more. They've changed the siege tower conversion distance to 0.5 tiles, which is the same as ramps, which is actually an amazing play. It's absolutely ridiculous for me that you could use a monk with redemption and convert a siege tower from 9 range. It always should have been like rams, in my opinion. So that's a really niche, but a very good change to now make siege towers less or more viable in some weird instances. Buildings garrison with villagers no longer fire fewer arrows after researching ranged attack upgrades. I didn't even know that was a thing. Did anyone else know that was a thing? I didn't know that was a thing. Mangonels now deal -1 damage to monks. This, I think, is because there are niche cases where the Mangonels are able to kill the monks when the monks should be able to get conversions. It's a weird one. You should always be able... I'm curious what that means now with a Mangonel attack on a monk that doesn't have Sanctity. I'm wondering if they're still one-shotting monks without Sanctity, because it was always quite close. Either way, Let's see. It says this improves consistency for monks with sanctity researched, as they will no longer randomly die due to direct hits from mangonels. Okay, so without sanctity, you're still losing your monk, which should be the case in my opinion. But there are some cases where you, with sanctity, were losing it. So that's what they wanted to affect. I think that's a good change. Now, the big one is we've got, oh man, we're 10 minutes into this already. The big one is infantry. The whole patch is just like infantry, infantry, infantry. And they have done my supplies dirty and they have removed supplies, RIP to supplies, which just the reason it was memed on is because the tech kind of was a noob bait in the first place. The only people I'd see research it early were people who didn't know what it did. And it just felt like another, like to go for infantry, you have to get all these technologies. And they never really hard committed to supplies being that valuable to the game. They just made it this dirt cheap tech that everyone just, if you research, would get before you went for it. It didn't feel like it added a ton of value for me. So I get why they removed it. And now the militia line cost has just been reduced overall for everybody. So 50 food, 20 gold. You no longer need to get supplies. I think that's a good change, in my opinion. A big change here is they have also increased the movement speed of the militia line to the same speed as a foot archer, right? So it was always 0.9 versus 0.96. Now it's 0.96 for both. This could make man-at-arms more viable, even way more so than like the militia line cost would affect, in my opinion, but it's still big effect there. They've also made two-handed swordsman cheaper. They made the research time faster. Again, that's another tech that feels like it's kind of in the middle there before you get your way up to champion. So I kind of like that. They've also made champion cheaper. They've also made research time like way faster as well to do this. And they've also increased the base attack to 14. So like these are all crazy changes. Cost, speed, removing technology and supplies, and then also saving lots of resources. So, I mean, they're doing everything they can to make champions playable. Arson moved to feudal age, and they've reduced the cost significantly. They've reduced it to 75-25. Honestly, my gut reaction, I think they're doing way too many changes on infantry at once, but Arson being 75-25 actually has the potential to be absolutely insane. From what I know from discussions that I have had, this could mean that like villagers can't out repair a house with like 3 or 4 or 5 villagers if there's like 3 men-at-arms on the other side of it. It can get pretty insane. I'm curious to see how it goes. But 75, moving it up in age, made me think, oh, great, you can like get it late feudal age, maybe as you're on the way to castle age. You make it 75-25, we might see a lot of infantry here. And maybe that's good. Maybe that's good. I think we've needed a meta shakeup for some time here. Eagle Scouts now also train a bit faster, and I think that's wise thinking because like the counter to Eagles is man-at-arms. There's 1,000,001 infantry buffs. Eagles will probably be hard to justify as is for the civs that can make them. Now, I love the Aztecs. One of my favorite units all time is the Elite Jaguar Warrior, and it's not something you see that frequently, and they have buffed this massively. They increased the base attack to like from 10 to 15. So it's 15 attack now in Castle Age. And then for Elite, they're moving it from 12 to 19. And you might be like, okay, well, that's insane, right? Well, then you do have the bonus damage versus infantry reduced, I guess, to cancel out some of those, because it was already really strong against other forms of infantry. But now they also gain +1 attack when defeating a military unit, up to a maximum of +4. I've read that this might have some type of like weird thematic historical like vibes to it. But again, it's just like a double buff. These are massive buffs, dude. And they didn't remove Garland Wars either. So there's bonus damage at play. You're attached to Aztec economy. Like, Jags could be absolutely insane. I'm just wondering, like, what do these end up doing against buildings at a certain point? Now, they are still going to be weak against archers. So, and like gunpowder. But, yeah, I mean, Jags are something to be scared of. Bengalis, they nerfed the Ratha by reducing the HP from 105 to 100 with at the risk of being disrespectful. This feels like a nerf of, well, the community thinks this unit's OP. Let's say we did something. I don't think that a 5 HP changes the issues that Ratha have at the moment, which is a whole nother conversation. They did also make them slightly longer to train. So slightly weaker, slightly harder to, or take slightly longer to produce them, which will hopefully make Rathas a bit more balanced. Bulgarians, no massive changes. They just affect the armor for the dismounted Conic, which I guess is fun. But Burgundians, this is one of the most exciting ones here, guys. So Burgundians, Flemish militia can now be trained at the barracks. I was baffled by this. It's interesting, right? Like, Burgundians kind of need some early game flair. They don't have it. And they also changed the cost, so it's 30 food, 30 gold, which is interesting. Again, it's kind of off-brand for infantry, typically. It's like typically high food, low gold cost. So that change actually surprises me. I think it'll make it be tough to justify. You've got different HPs per age. So in Castle Age, it's a 55 HP unit with 8 attack with low speed, so it doesn't feel that strong. You do have some different bonuses involved there. But overall, I think this is going to give them something. I actually think the more interesting thing could be, like, do we see some weird Flemish militia rush in Feudal Age on like an open land map? I don't know if the unit's necessarily going to be good enough to be as the bulk of your main army in late game. But again, I think that's fine because the Burgundians already have a super well-established late game army with like paladins and gunpowder. So interesting change. I don't know how much it will change, but I'm excited for that. And I'm also excited for the Celt changes. So Woads, they've actually increased the price. They're decreasing the speed ever so slightly. And then the Elite Woad Raider base attack has been increased up to 15. So a bit stronger, I would say, than it was before. But man, it's been so freaking long of me asking for this. I'm so happy they're doing this. Infantry movement speed, civilization bonus adjusted from 15% faster starting in feudal. And they're tiering it again. I don't know exactly what it was before, but in the past, infantry was actually faster in the Dark Age with the Celts. It was like that for 20 plus years. They removed it because of Huang, probably, and people who complained because of Huang. And it's back now. So I like this. I always felt like Celts, they needed a little bit of something early. Combined with all these infantry changes and already a pretty good economy, Celts could be pretty tough to stop. And yeah, that faster moving infantry combined with arson, combined with the wood eco can be very dangerous with the Celts on open maps. They're still going to be really solid on closed maps with their good eco and siege. So I'm happy with that. Now, big changes to the Chinese. The developer noticed the Chinese are now listed as an archer and gunpowder civilization, and they're receiving a massive update to their units and bonuses. So you're going to see they say a similar thing here for Koreans. And they also will say in this that there's going to be 5 civs on the new DLC. So speculation is that Chinese are going to be split up, and there's going to be like different civilizations spawning from just the Chinese. It could still be Chinese and then a list of a couple more civs. We don't know yet. But yeah, so keep that in mind because it's going to be overwhelming. All these new things are coming in, and I don't have more details just yet, but Fire Lancers are coming to the game. Rocket carts are coming to the game. Luch Wands are coming to the game. Dragon ships, which is an upgrade to fire ships, which sounds really cool, is coming. They're going to have a new bonus. Fire Lancers and fire ships move 5 and 10% faster. Demo ship HP bonus was removed, which the Chinese always had for years. They're buffing the Chukunu and nerfing it at the same time. So they're buffing the attack, but they're making it more expensive to get elite, which I think balances out in some ways. And they're also increasing the price of rocketry, which I think is actually a very good idea. And it says effect change from Chukunu +2 attack and Scorpions +4 attack to Scorpions, rocket carts, and Luchwans +25% attack. And then also Luchwans fire rockets. Okay, so time will tell because we've got some new units at play there, but making some changes to rocketry while still keeping the same theme. No camels available for Chinese. No mangonels available for Chinese, and then no cannon galleons. The camels and the mangonels are a big one, but I think that's because they're going to have these other units, right? They're clearly going to have like a siege unit of some kind, which might be the rocket carts or the Luchwans. And then the Fire Lancer is kind of a unit that they'll have that other civs won't. So interesting stuff with the Chinese. We'll see. Dravidians, they're buffing the Yurumi Swordsman, which falls in line with the whole patch. I think Yurumis can be absolutely busted as is. So, but it's also tough to justify. It's tough to play into at times, I would say. So I can kind of understand that. Georgians, I don't know who in the dev room is still really trying to cling to this HP regeneration bonus, but it's kind of funny to me. So they're changing it. So cavalry regeneration civilization bonus reduced from 5, 10, 15 HP as from feudal castle to imp to 2, 8, and 14. I I don't know what the regeneration rate was initially when the civ was released in feudal, but if you've got to work this all the way down to 2 devs, why not just make it a castle age and imperial age thing? It's still like the thing about regeneration in feudal is it still auto gives them the advantage in any scout war. It still dictates how fights are taken in Dark Age. It still dictates how fights are going to be taken in feudal. Now, is it less likely that a couple weak scouts are going to linger in your base and kill as much because they're only regenerating by 2? Yes, but at least at the competitive level, regenerating in feudal age just has such a big effect. I really think if they want to keep that bonus, they should just do castle and they should do imp. That's my feeling on it. Clearly, they want to keep it in feudal age for now. But the other thing too with Georgians, everyone's focused on the regenerations. They've got some other things balance-wise that I would like to see. I don't think you should get a free mule cart, which means you don't have to take wood at all in the entirety of your early build without a decrease in something. They should have less wood, maybe a little bit of less food. And then, that's before we even get into the work rate from the churches, which is strong. I'm not trying to nerf Georgians to the ground, by the way. I just think that there would be more tweaks with that civ in the future, or needs to be, at least from my feeling as a high-level player and tournament host. Goths. They're increasing the price of they're reducing the price of the Huskarl, which makes sense because there might be more Huskarl counters out there. And they're also reducing the training time, which I think works out. I like this. I'm curious to see what the builds can end up being, but Goths now have slightly cheaper infantry as things go on. I could have its biggest effect in imp, honestly, because Goths already had cheap infantry and could spam so fast. So if it ends up being just like 5% cheaper in imp, or that 5% cheaper in castle in the late castle age play, we could see a lot of infantry, which I think is what people want. So will be fun. Tarkin, no massive changes there. Italians, they've removed Pavise. They're moving the Silk Road tech to Castle Age, which doesn't have a big effect. That's a trading tech. But they have a new SIP bonus now. Foot archers and condos +1 melee and +1 pierce armor. I'm not initially in love with this change, personally. That's just my gut reaction. Their new tech, Pyrotechnica, will be available in imp, and hand cannons deal +15% pass-through damage and are more accurate. I think this is actually an insane tech because hand cannons do a lot of overkill as is. They do a lot of damage, but they're like dishing out way too much damage to the units on the front lines. So if you have pass-through with a unit that has high attack, I think this can be very, very, very strong. This has the potential to be broken, in my opinion. I feel like maybe condos are a bit more viable because you might not have to wait for Pavise, which affected them before. I was also wondering if maybe they would consider making condos available in the Castle Age. I think 80 HP and 10 base attack is maybe a bit much, but they gave Flemish militia to the Burgundians. I want to give me your thoughts on that in the comments. I fully expected them to do that the second I saw the Italians here. We'll see how these other changes play out. They definitely feels like the Civ needed a little bit more on lands. I think this accomplishes that somewhat, but I don't know. I think they're sneaky OP on land at the same time. So yeah, Italians should be in a good spot. Japanese, the samurai cost has been reduced, which is wild. 45 food and 30 gold is super cheap. And then they gain additional movement speed and +1 attack when charging at enemy units. Again, give me your thoughts. This is a change, kind of like the Jaguar Warrior, where you're getting the extra attack when you get kills. I've always been kind of against like charge attacks. I've never been a big fan of like ignoring armor or shredding armor. Some of those things are just maybe because I'm too old. It felt a bit much for me. I do kind of like it for the samurai because I don't know. There's something cool about the samurai. It feels like it fits, but the additional movement speed is kind of a tricky one. Where's the details on how much faster that is? Like, is that not kind of important? I feel like if it's very subtle and it's not like too crazy, then maybe it doesn't affect gameplay that much and it's just a little bit of flair. But yeah, I guess we'll see how that plays out. Team bonus, I didn't even know Japanese had this team bonus, so this change doesn't change too much for me at the end of the day. Keeping it going, guys. There's a lot to talk about. We're, 25 minutes into this video. Oh, God. Also, the lighting in this room is not the best. Sorry, I look like an absolute potato. But Khmer, attack has been reduced for the Ballista Elephant. Makes sense because Ballista Elephants are really OP. Everyone saw that coming when Scorpion change came in. I think they will remain OP, but it's a good nerf in my opinion. And then Koreans. So here it says Koreans are receiving a massive update to their units and bonuses. So again, I'm wondering, like, is this new DLC going to be Koreans and Chinese? They gain access to the Fire Lancers and the rocket cards. Civilization bonuses, there's been some changes. So reduced minimum range for Mangonel line. Team bonus has been replaced with villagers +3 line of sight. So they no longer have the reduced minimum range for the Mangonel line. Still have the villager line of sight, which is good. War Wagon, they're reducing the bonus damage versus buildings. I could see that. They can shred buildings pretty quickly. It could be a really tough unit to stop. Turtle Ship now fires 2 volleys of rockets in between its cannon shots. Okay, that's something. Received a large number of statistical changes. They're now more effective versus galley line, but more vulnerable versus demo ships. I'm kind of curious to see how this plays out. Turtles at the moment are seen as too expensive to really justify because mass, like other versions of ships, can do too well against them for the cost. This maybe makes it a little bit better. And then there needs to be some counterplay with demos, which get interesting. There's different attack rates and damage now. There's projectile speed differences. There's now rockets that will fire, like I just said. So there's big changes to the turtle ships overall, which I can't really dive into until we test it. Shinkachon unique tech, the cost has been changed from 800 wood and 500 gold to 1,100 food and 800 gold. I think this is going to affect the other things. Oh yeah, effects changed from Mangonel line +1 range to rocket carts and turtle ships +1 range and firing additional rockets. What's kind of unlike the team here is that they have buffed something while also realizing, that could be overpowered. Let's increase the cost. That is unlike some of the other changes they've made, in my opinion. I actually really like the fact that they did that. That feels like a balanced approach. But what does that mean? What do they know? That tells me they actually did a considerable amount of testing and know that that's going to be really broken. So I'm excited for that. And obviously they lose the Mangonel line because they'll have their rocket carts and turtle ships. So yeah, that's Koreans. Malay still have more line of sight in their docks. No big change there. Organ gun, which could be a pain to deal with. They've made have less HP. I like that change. If they're not going to change how the organ gun works in general, which I don't think they will at this point, it needs to be a little bit weaker. It needs to be a little bit flimsier because the unit's so good in conjunction with monks. So that's a good move in my opinion. Legionary speed has been increased to match champion line. That makes sense. Romans will lose access to arson, which is pretty sad there. Sicilians, one of the forgotten civilizations in terms of balance for years, except for some tricky plays, which you guys have seen my videos on. Big change here. I'm actually going to show this before we show the sergeant changes. Donjon can now be built in the Dark Age. It will have very low stats. That will obviously increase when you get to feudal, and it will only fire arrows when you make it to feudal. The biggest change here, in my opinion, guys, is not for donjon rushing. I'm sure that some people will try that, but the bigger effect is you can build your donjon on your way up to feudal, have it complete right when you make it to feudal, and then you can actually take advantage of the fact that that can basically replace your barracks. Because how it's been working is you have to make it to feudal, then you have to build your donjon, then you build your stable or your archery range. No one's doing that because you have a delayed stable or archery range. Now you can have a good stable and archery range timing, thus you can justify the defensive donjon. It makes for their play to be a little bit stronger, in my opinion. Now, they did also change the armor of the sergeants. I like these changes because, to me, this will incentivize a lot of sergeant rushing and donjon rushing, and it makes them a little weaker when that's a problem, which is mainly feudal age and early castle age. So, I mean, weaker in some ways, stronger in others. We'll see. But nice changes overall to the Sicilians, in my opinion. And it did, the developer note pretty much said everything that I just described. Slavs, they no longer get free supplies and gambesons. Now it's free arson and gambesons. Makes sense. Spanish, missionaries are now affected by cav armor upgrades. I mean, I think missionaries could be absolutely insane as is, especially with the Inquisition tech, and we all know no one expects that. So, I mean, that's wild. It's kind of niche, but still, like, we could see some fun things with missionaries from the Spanish. They're buffing the HP on the KP boys of the Teutonic Knights, so they'll be a bit tankier, which is pretty incredible considering how much armor they already have. They are slow, though. So that they didn't change their identity there, which I like. Vietnamese will get access to Fire Lancers, so another civ that will get that. And then their civ bonus, their archer range units plus 20% HP bonus has been adjusted to archer range units and Fire Lancers plus 20% HP. Man, they had to do some real specific dancing there because they couldn't say stable units because that would be too much because their elephants already have lots of HP. I don't know what a Fire Lancer is going to be like yet, but that's interesting. That Fire Lancers will have more HP. So it's kind of like, I guess Mongols have like more HP on their Steppe Lancers. They're the only one that does. Vietnamese will be the same in this regard. Viking, the elite berserk cost has been reduced just to fall in line with all the other infantry buffs. And those are the big overall balance changes. And thank you guys for making it here. If you made it to this point of the video, say I made it somewhere in the comments so I know you guys actually didn't click off before. I'm going to skip past some of the changes they've made for all these campaigns. And I got a couple more things to talk about here, which I think are really big. So first off, they've added Glade and Fortified Clearing to the game. Glade, you've probably never heard it before. It's an okay map. I actually considered it for a tournament before. It's really not my favorite, but it's a new map added to the pool, which I think is great. Fortified Clearing is sick. Fortified Clearing is a map you see in a lot of tournaments. I think this is needed. This actually excites me to play this map already on ranked. I know a lot of people have been in the same boat. Great Wall is a new real world map, which just looks absolutely fascinating. I'm also wondering, why is there a rooster on the mini map there? There's definitely a rooster there. Or is that a chicken? Or is that a turkey? I don't know. I have no clue why it's there, but that'll be a fun map to potentially look into. They've also added quick start variations for certain maps where basically it's a 9 villager start. I'm curious to see, like, this is quick start. Quick start doesn't really have a lot of people who play that. I'm wondering if they'll eventually like have a 9 villager start ranked ladder, which feels like people would actually play. So that's kind of an interesting change that they've made. Now, map balance, they've done a lot to add variety here. Long story short, there's more variance in what type of map generation you're going to get for Arabia. So players could potentially have a little bit more wood. Hunt distance can be, like, instead of a range of 23 and 27 tiles, now it's 20, 28 tiles, so you could have hunt that's really close, hunt that's really far. There's also now a chance that huntable animals gather in groups of 2 and 4 instead of only 3. There's also a little bit more unpredictability on where relics spawn, but it'll still overall be balanced. There also is going to be new elevation, which is more representative of the legacy map. I've been asking for this, like, literally just add more variety to Arabia. No wonder the meta gets stale. Not only have there not been balance changes, but it's the same every single time. And then also, this is going to be new. There's now a 50% chance that regular huntable animals will be replaced by a group of small unpushable huntable animals. So basically, you could still deer push with deer if they're there, depending on the location. There's going to be more pros and cons now because the map will be crazy. You might need to scout. But you don't have to push the deer. There will also sometimes be instances where you might want to mill other sources of food. As I said before, I think the deer pushing conversation is a meta and map issue. It is not a deer pushing issue. I like these changes a lot to spice up Arabia and just like kind of games as a whole. Apparently, Arena is going to be the same. Now, I'm a little surprised by this. I don't hate it. I'm curious to see how it plays out. I think some people are going to be hoping that Arena is left untouched, because that's not really a map where you're typically moving out a lot of your walls. It's like staying in your walls and staying safe. We'll see how things play out. They also did some general balance changes apparently and added some themes. Black Forest and all these other maps I won't dive into massively, but Mega Random I will. A major increase of variations for all map layouts leading to less predictability. Thank you. Thank you, Mega Random. Like, for those that don't know, the DE version of Mega Random, I was going to make a video on this, just horrible compared to older versions. It just didn't have a lot of variety at all. You can start with way more villagers on Nomad starts. You can have like additional neutral resources to take, like huntables, herdables, and neutral areas. And there's going to be different tree types too. Like, it seems like they're just going to increase the variety of Mega Random, which is great. That's what Mega Random players want. Nomad, they're adding a chance of small landlock, which is, again, back to like neutral old Nomad. There's more variety. There's a lot more to it here, but they're changing some small things with the way the dimensions work on the map. Long story short, beyond just some fixes, they're adding variety. Even Yucatan, they're adding more predators. They're changing the way the water can spawn. These are just great changes to the game, guys. These are going to make games way less stale and more adaptive and more scouting focused, which is what I think a lot of people want. So this patch has been absolutely insane. Look at some of these things they've added here. Bamboo and Asian pines and peach blossoms. Like, some of this stuff looks super cool. Look at this. Panda Rock. There's pandas hanging out on the rock. Imagine that. Very well named. Just some fun things they're adding to the game. There's black bears, polar bears, and Arabian wolves added to the game. They weren't in the game before. You can see here's some of the unpushable hunt. There's chickens. So these are, I think, going to be millable, or you might want to justify milling there, for example. I literally cannot talk about all the things that they've added because they've added so much with this. Now, they did say a lot about pathfinding. With pathfinding, honestly, it's a wait and see game for me because I've seen we've improved pathfinding so many times only to see that they addressed one thing of pathing without realizing that it affected another. So sorry, devs, but I'm not really that excited about that one yet, and I don't trust it because my heart has been broken many times, but apparently there's been improvements there. I did want to add one more thing. Now, actually, I have to go back to the top here, which is kind of weird. But one thing they did add, which I thought was really nice, it's specifically for the Ratha, or maybe any other type of unit that gets this change. But they've changed it so there is a change weapon hotkey and added a second instance of this hotkey. So basically, you can have like a melee hotkey and a ranged hotkey for Ratha. Makes it much easier to toggle it instead of just pressing change mode. Because what would happen is you have some melee, you have some ranged, and you group them all up together, and then you're pressing change mode, and they're like changing different ways, and you couldn't get them all to be together. Really freaking annoying. And so I think that makes playing with those modes a lot more intuitive as a player. And I didn't want to start the video with that. I figured I'd end the video with that because I think that's pretty much it, guys. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else that I missed. I mean, there's a ton that I'm sure I missed. I really am looking forward to your comments to tell me what you're most excited about for this. Especially because I'm here in Hamburg at the Experion for the event hosted by Being Esports. I'm going to be looking at comments about all this stuff because I can't really be as actively engaged talking just about this. But I hope you guys enjoyed the overview and my efforts to make it happen regardless. I'll have content coming up to my extras channel that will show some of the epic games happening at the LAN event here in Hamburg. We'll also have info in the description. But yeah, thank you guys for watching the video. 39 minutes. Well, that could have been worse. I could have easily talked for an hour on some of this stuff. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you don't like. I'll look for your comments, and I'll obviously make more videos on that soon. Main channel have uploads all the time. You know the drill, so I'll shut up now. And thank you guys again for watching. Exciting times. I'm really pumped for this, man. I was not expecting them to add this much before the DLCs. I thought the DLCs would come, and that would be it. So the fact that all this is going to come makes me happy. Thanks, guys.